In the next few minutes, I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on the next Netflix series titled Jeen-Yuhs, spelled Jen-Yuhs. It's a three-part series, documentary series, about essentially the career of Kanye West. But what's interesting about it is that it's done in a style of more or less home movies. The footage is all taken, just about all of it's taken from Kanye's friend that he met when he was young, when Kanye was like 17, and this guy, the filmmaker, the one documenting what's going on, was in his early 20s. So from his young years, when he was pushing to make it into the scene, when he had gotten this reputation as being somebody who creates beats exclusively, but wasn't getting much credit as a creative force as far as being a rapper, lyricist. But the first two parts of the documentary, particularly, show him in these early years, and the kind of ambition that drove him, and how hard he pushed himself, how hard he worked at it, and how important it was to him to make it. And things are shown in a way that avoids judgment. We, especially later on, after Kanye becomes a well-known and famous recording artist, he, as we all know, engaged in various activities. Sorry about that, crappy drivers everywhere. He engaged in various activities or stunts that caught the world's attention, and he became this kind of audacious figure that some people thought was just an ass, just full of himself. And I was one of them. I have to admit it. Back in 2009, I was simping for Taylor Swift when Kanye got up and interrupted, and when she was supposed to get her award at I think it was the Grammys, or it was something like that, and said, "I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce had the best album of all time." And a lot of people it was I'm struck by the irony of that moment, because at the time, right-wing conservative types were, of course, on the side of this girl, this helpless blonde waif who had this loudmouth black guy come up who'd already done a couple things, who'd already said that George Bush doesn't care about black people, on some he went off script during something about Hurricane Katrina, and so everybody was down on him. Everybody was criticizing Kanye for this, and it was completely inappropriate. What I wonder about now is whether it was staged or not. I'm much more inclined to think such things about the music industry, and these are not questions that are considered in the documentary. But we see that happen, and then the irony, as I was starting to say, is that by 2017, 2018, Taylor Swift came out as just another celebrity shit lib, who thinks Trump is terrible and blah 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 blah. But Kanye was a Trump supporter, and he was anti-abortion, and he was pushing this Christian album, and he was just making all kinds of waves. So essentially, their roles had switched, which I found to be really, really interesting. So I admit I'm not a huge rap or hip hop fan, but I can appreciate it more than I think I used to be able to. I get that it takes skill, and that there's some songs you listen to and you think, wow, that's a really clever turn of phrase, or this guy's got a flow going, he's spitting bars, all the things that they say, and I do think that Kanye is a very talented person. What we kind of see in this video documentary, again, without judgment, the person filming this documentary was somebody who was a friend of Kanye's from early on, and then they kind of grew apart after Kanye blew up, but then they got back together again, became closer again later on, after Kanye after his mental health was heavily questioned, and he became the kind of controversial figure that he was during the Trump years. So all throughout all of that, there's no judgment shown. I was afraid, particularly when we got to the later Kanye, that there would be some typical kind of tisk scolding, self-righteousness on the part of the filmmaker. But even if the filmmaker himself didn't like or didn't agree with or couldn't understand the directions that Kanye was going in, he never condemned him for anything. Now it becomes clearer later on in the documentary that Kanye does struggle with mental health, and I think that can be said about him without it being like a diss of him, or you can say that and still be a fan. You can say that of him and still think that he's a genius. It's one of those things where it's a cliche, but it's a compelling one. Where does genius stop and madness begin, and vice versa? It becomes clear that Kanye has his moments where we see him talking, and he's very articulate, very smart guy, and again, very ambitious, all very creative. All of that is there, but there are times where we see him suddenly start just going off on something, some non sequitur, and he'll start talking about it in great detail, and it's very uncomfortable. It's like one of those moments where he seems to be off his meds, as they say, and the filmmaker, the guy doing the filming, again, who knew Kanye from early on in their days growing up in Chicago, at this moment he decides to stop filming because he feels a little ashamed, like this is a private thing, and like he's capturing something that's really not appropriate to be showing. He does show a little bit of it. We do see a bit of Kanye behaving in this erratic fashion, but then he says, I turned off the camera at that point because this just didn't seem right to keep filming him when he's in this condition. This is not an esoteric documentary. This is not a documentary that really looks into or questions some of the things that I think a lot of people who look into the careers of celebrities, whether they're musicians or actors, or anyone involved in showbiz these days, and sees certain patterns and wonders what they could mean. It is worth saying that Kanye, when he was first hustling his music, trying to get noticed, trying to get a label to pick him up, He eventually gravitated toward the Rockefeller label, which is run by Jay-Z. Jay-Z is well known for being very Masonic and using this esoteric symbolism, and he quotes Crowley. He has that T-shirt where he quotes Crowley, "Do as thou wilt." He's friends with Marina Abramovich, so Jay-Z's got a lot of very dark ties. And he holds up that triangle. He throws up that Masonic symbol, and this is the group that, again, Kanye really ingratiated himself with. And he ingratiated himself with the Kardashians. There's nothing much in this documentary involving Kim Kardashian or Kanye's children or anything like that. But we do see later on when Kanye, the time when he's running for president, on the birthday party. That's the name of the party that he's running on, the birthday party. And he gets very, very upset at one press conference and says, I could have aborted my kids, but I didn't. I'm so glad that I didn't. My father wanted to abort me, but it was only because of my mother that I'm still here. And I'm not going to let my daughters be sold into sexual slavery or something like that. Some really intense kind of very personal stuff that showed where his mind was at. And of course, the way it came across to a lot of people was that Kanye was losing his mind. He was losing his marbles. But we see there's an interesting scene near the end where we see Tucker Carlson on Fox News talking about this press conference and saying, well, it's not a polished sort of presidential press conference. He's not saying the expected things. He's not reading from a script, but he seems to be speaking from the heart. What he's saying is true. He's right about these things. And a lot of the people in the car, a lot of Kanye's entourage were trying to, say, hey, stop listening to this white boy. And, he's taking what you said out of context. And Kanye fires back, no, he's putting it into context. Which I thought was a great moment, because it again showed how smart Kanye was, that he alone could see that Tucker Carlson, this unlikely supporter, this preppy white guy on Fox News, was taking his side. So then there's the conversion. You get the feeling that Christianity, that faith, it plays a role in his life from early on, but that it's sort of something that, sort of like was always the sort of the story or the mythos surrounding Prince. I get the feeling it's when you talk about black performers in America, faith is really, faith makes a big dent in that community, and people, in a way that it does not necessarily do amongst middle-class whites. And so that's something that sort of has to be understood and also put in a context. And in the movie, we see him move towards faith and even record a gospel album called Jesus is Lord, which I think came out in 2018 or so. The question, and this is something that never quite gets resolved, is he's still hanging out with Jay-Z and Rockefeller Records, and he's still, obviously he got into this crowd. He ingratiated himself with this crowd, and the imagery that they display and the kind of symbols that they throw up and so forth, it all speaks for itself. Rockefeller, obviously close to the Rockefellers, the world leaders, that's all that has a sort of demonic connotation. And yet I get the impression that Kanye's devotion comes to be something that's very real to him. Um, and so there are these unresolved tensions because, yes, he's still with Kim, and although I think they've divorced by now, I haven't followed all of the drama, but um, uh, and on his latest album, he still had Jay-Z and a bunch of other people who you might see as tainted. Definitely not the sort of people who would record a gospel record. So, what has he been able to actually leave behind from the days when he, in one way or another, could be said to have sold his soul to become famous? Because he was really, in those early segments, we see him really, really hustling hard and willing to do just about anything to become famous. Another interesting thing from an esoteric perspective that's never really commented on that much involves Kanye's mother, Donda. It's clear from early on that Donda was a really stabilizing force for Kanye, and that he loved her very, very dearly, and they were very close, but not in an unhealthy way. Not in a way that seemed inappropriate or anything like that. She just seemed like somebody who really had her head on right, and was giving him encouragement, but also, giving him advice and helping him stay somewhat grounded. And then at the age of 58, in 2007 or so, she suddenly dies of a massive heart attack. Now, that's not a very typical thing for a 58-year-old woman who seemed to be in okay shape generally, to suffer a massive heart attack. It happens. I know it happens, but it's not that common. She doesn't exactly fit the profile. And of course, there are a lot of people who think that celebrities are called upon to sacrifice a member of their family in order to sort of cement their ambition, or show that they are devoted to the industry. I don't know whether this is true or not. I'm not claiming that it is true, but at the same time, it's also true that there have been a ton of celebrities who have seen loved ones die in very strange, unusual ways. That proportionally to the population, it's way higher, and so one wonders about Kanye losing his mother, who seemed to be in some ways his lifeline. The thing that kept him tethered to sanity in some ways. Was he somehow induced to I don't know, be complicit in her death? That's a question that people will ask when they watch this video. People who have this more esoteric kind of conspiratorial perspective on the entertainment industry, which is a very evil industry and does involve a lot of people doing really terrible things. So the death of Donda, the circumstances surrounding her death, would be something that I would like to know more about. Again, without casting aspersions, without saying I'm anything close to being absolutely sure about there being any complicity on the part of anyone, in the industry, and particularly Kanye. Though if that's how sacrifices work, then who knows? But in spite of all of that, I found myself really liking Kanye, really appreciating his creativity, his balls, his moxie. He's somebody who really went hard, who has really gone hard against the grain in recent years, in spouting conservative messages, becoming a Christian, supporting Trump, all these kinds of things. So while I do view the music industry that he's a part of with a great deal of suspicion and a great deal of dread and approbation, I find myself rooting for Kanye and wanting him to ultimately prevail over the worser part of him, as Hamlet says to his mother in Hamlet. So those are my thoughts on Jeen-Yuhs, a documentary of Kanye West. Let me know what you think.